you very much for the invitation to be here today. As mentioned, I work for La Revue Prescrire, and it's part of the organization Mieux Prescrire that publishes two different bulletins, one in French and another one in English. And in accordance with French legislation, I should declare to you that I have no competing interests with the pharmaceutical industry or medical devices industry. And I'm here today to speak to you on behalf of the International Society of Drug Bulletins, ISDB, as you can see there. All around the world, about 80 bulletins are together in this network from around 40 countries. And so the views that I'm about to present are in some parts of the views of the network, and in other examples are the experience that we have acquired at Prescrire. So ISDB works together to publish comparative information and other about drugs, but also about other treatment options. So it can be about diagnostics or strategies and interventions. The members, so the bulletins, share an interest in developing methods to generate the best information possible, to optimize data research, but also to provide editorial training and assistance between drug bulletins. We advocate towards a greater transparency at regulatory agencies and healthcare authorities around the world, and we monitor closely what's happening in Europe. So it's not a surprise then that we've been invited here today to share our view on this issue. Access to data is essential to our work because we need this data to be able to develop and to produce good information and quality information for healthcare professionals and for consumers. We also believe that it is the best way to, it is essential to develop and to support informed choice, particularly when we want to identify what is real innovation, so new drugs that actually have an added therapeutical value, be it in efficacy, be it in safety, or be it in convenience, in order to provide the best possible care to patients. We also consider that access to data enables public scrutiny from organizations or institutions like ours, and it also encourages the accountability of public institutions. Unfortunately, there's more than meets the eye. This is an illustration that was published in La Revue Prescrire in 2009. As I'll explain later, I think that this submarine is slowly emerging. But still today, there are several ISDB bulletins that request information or documents from the EMA on a regular basis. The Arznei Telegram in Germany, Dialogo Südschwarni in Italy, DTB Navarra, Notas Therapeutics in Spain. But what we are able to obtain is still but a fraction of the information that is held by the authorities, not even mentioning the information that is not submitted. That's another battle. And yet these institutions do have a clear duty to uphold transparency and to communicate with the public. So, as I said, the public scrutiny is only possible if the public, we, have access to the evidence on which decisions are based and are provided with a rationale for those decisions. So a recommendation to have an authorization into the market is important, but if we don't understand the rationale behind it, there's not much we can do to provide quality information. But all that glitters is not gold. So as you can see here, if we choose, a pharmaceutical company chooses to present but a subset of their information, we can get absolutely the wrong picture out into the public. The quality work that independent researchers can do can be of assistance to regulators, for instance in pharmacovigilance, and that is the evidence we have. So signals can be confirmed, as in the case of benfluorex, or rimonabant, or rofecoxib, or rosiglitazone. But why are these efficacy and safety data so important to us? Because, for instance, in the case of Prescrire, our reviews are based on a thorough literature research for documents that relate to the drug pre-approvals process, particularly clinical trial reports. So in addition to that, we also look into textbooks, bibliographic databases. We search the websites of drug regulatory agencies, health economic institutions, and also health technology assessment bodies. And so we also ask the regulatory agencies to provide specific information and unpublished documents. And we also consult within our network of ISDB, and we look whether other network bulletins have published on a particular drug. So this is an example from 2009, and I will apologize for people that have seen this picture before. At that point in time, we had asked the EMA for access to documents about rimonabant, This is a Swedish, sorry about the typo, the report by the Swedish agency on that drug. This drug was eventually withdrawn, but you can see from 68 pages, 3 were legible. Even the date where the report was published was blacked out. So at that point in time, this was the type of information that we were receiving from the EMA agency. Don't ask me how are we supposed to produce quality information to prescribers and pharmacists and consumers with this type of access. There are several obstacles that prevent access to data. Some of them we have already mentioned here today. One of them, of course, is commercial confidentiality. And in our view, we consider that this vague interpretation of commercial confidentiality notion actually puts commercial interests before human health. And we see that as being a problem and actually as being inconsistent with EU regulations. So we think there needs to be a clear political will to establish a more precise definition of commercial confidentiality. And as just as Fergus has mentioned, the onus should be on the company to prove why that information should not be released. And maybe that would make the job easier to regulatory agencies when they receive our requests for access to documents. Also, what we are able to see here and what we would advocate is that exceptions to the disclosure, so that means the specific cases in which a document should not be disclosed, should be a section of a document, not the actual whole thing, as in this case. We would advocate that all data that have a bearing on human health, particularly clinical data, should be excluded from the commercial confidentiality definition. And we also have a problem with the refusal to respond to requests when it is considered that the decision-making process is ongoing. So we know that, just as Professor Ashler has mentioned, that the MEA does not provide access to documents when the decision has not been made. So sometimes from the moment that the recommendation is made by the CHMP until the moment where the actual European Commission rubber stamps the decision, that can take a couple of months. But we also have an example with a particular drug, the case of fingolimod. It was already authorized into the market in Europe. It was authorized in March 2011 by the EMA. In December 2011, the FDA reports the sudden death of a patient that had just taken fingolimod 24 hours before. So within 24 hours, the patient died. This was in December 2011. Prescrier filed a request for access document on 22 December. So the same month, and we waited, and on the 23rd of January, 34 minutes before the legally mandated deadline, the EMA informed us that the request had been rejected on the grounds that the EMA was reevaluating fingolimod. But the reevaluation of fingolimod had just been initiated 3 days before. So, well, the EMA maybe should have, we reiterated the information request on 7th of February and we are still waiting for a reply. So what is most interesting, for instance, in this case is that, well, actually, if the re-evaluation was triggered by reports of adverse drug reactions, and these reports are being filed by healthcare professionals and patients. So actually, we are preventing potentially drug-induced harm that could be otherwise preventable by stalling this access to information. I could give you a whole list of concrete examples of information that should be available, but at the moment is not. But I would stress out particularly clinical data. It's in accordance with the Helsinki Declaration. We also don't know why consumption data is confidential, when actually companies are supposed to deliver it when they submit periodic safety update reports. We know that now there is this ADR reports website at the EMA. You can do a lot of analysis and look at the ADR reports around Europe and what has been reported, but you will never be able to know how many people in a given country were taking that medicine. Now, I would like to ask you, how can you judge the exposure to a medicine and the weight of that information and what it means if you are not granting the public the ability to know what is in the denominator? That is a problem, we think. But what about, I'm not going to paint a very bad picture because things also changed and our experience in seeking access to documents has also changed over time. So from 2005 to 2009, we saw that, and I can only talk about our experience as prescriber per individual agencies. So from 2005 to 2009, we saw that the MEA provided limited responses, sometimes even refusing or providing documents without annexes, and always refusing to send the periodic safety update reports. But since 2010, we noticed an additional effort by the MEA, and I'm happy to share that with you. The agency provides the periodic safety update reports and generally answers to our questions. But as I mentioned, it still refuses to provide any documents as long as the EU Commission has not granted the marketing authorization or the variation. But we do notice that the MEA applies by the rules to a certain extent, and that provides us a system through which we can assess the transparency, and that is important if we want to move things ahead. But because we are based in France, I can share some experience. The French regulatory system and our experience in access to documents is a bit à la mode, so it changes greatly. Depends a bit of the period in question, who are the directors at the agency, and who happens to be in the government. So from an initial time in 1994 to 2000, which we had good access, then was followed by 10 years of very poor access. But then after the scandal of Mediator, suddenly things opened up. And now we are actually seeing steps backward, and we are experiencing a certain relaxation. And there's a new government since June, so maybe it might be due to that. So because there is not a consistent approach, this consumes a lot of time and energy on our side, and so we often have problems in accessing information. On the very rare instances that we have asked the European Commission for information, the feedback has been very poor. And other agencies at national level do have a tradition of transparency, and I would like to highlight that. So for instance, the MHRA with its Freedom of Information Act, the Scandinavian agencies in Sweden and Norway, and also the Dutch agency. And what we've seen lately is also the German agencies that used to be very close are suddenly and quite slowly opening up. But traditionally, also the agencies in southern countries seem to be more closed, but we don't have, as we're based in France, so many occasions to solicit their information. And here I will have a suggestion for furthest. For the Ombudsman, we think that it would be very important that the EU Ombudsman site would have a portal where all appeal bodies would be listed per country, with contact details and a summary of the appeal procedures. That would help organisms or institutions like us, like through Bulletins, but also interested members of the public, to know how they could easily file a complaint if no or insufficient response has been given to an access to documents requests. As I mentioned earlier today, we have a ratings system in response to our systematic requests to the industry. So it ranges from the fact that the company has provided everything to us to no information. This is not new. This is another example. Australian Prescriber, which is a free independent publication from Australia. They also publish their T-score as a joke, almost, or seemingly to statistical analysis. Their T-score stands for transparency. And also we attribute prizes every year, so we actually give information awards to companies that are proactively delivering data to Prescriber to enable our data reviews. But at the same time, we issue red cards or red lanterns, as we call them, for companies that fail or to respond, to reply, or provide insufficient data. Thank you.